Imagine looking at a globally dominant tech company. I mean, a true household name in the enterprise software space.
Right.
And over the last 5 years, this company has grown its operating profit by a staggering 2,000%.
2,000. Yeah, that's massive.
It is. They've just fundamentally mastered the art of making money. But there is a massive catch here. Despite becoming a literal profit-generating machine, their stock price has actually crashed 45% from its peak.
Which, it completely defies the conventional logic of how financial markets are supposed to operate.
Exactly.
Because the basic assumption for anyone looking at a business is that, well, as profitability scales up, the intrinsic value of the company, and therefore its stock price, should scale with it. Just in a direct, visible correlation.
Oh, it feels like a total glitch in the matrix. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the detailed Q4 FY 2026 earnings and investment review of Salesforce, ticker symbol CRM.
A fascinating case study right now.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to decode whether this massive disconnect makes Salesforce a dangerous value trap to avoid or, a generational opportunity for you.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to ground this in the financial reality of the last 5 years.
Yeah, the numbers are stark.
They're incredibly severe. So, Q4 FY 2025, the stock peaks at $336.
Okay.
Today, it's sitting at $187. But at the exact same time, their trailing 12 months operating profits skyrocketed from $0.5 billion to $9.8 billion.
Which is that 63% increase you mentioned.
Yes, because they basically shifted from this growth at all costs mindset to being an absolute margin machine, mostly under intense pressure from activist investors. I mean, margins went from roughly 3% to 21%.
And we have to acknowledge that transition requires rewiring a company's entire corporate DNA.
Oh, for sure.
You're talking about pivoting a behemoth organization away from just aggressive hiring and blind market capture.
Yeah.
And forcing it to run almost entirely on operational efficiency and cost control. I have to admit, mathematically, I am really struggling with the mechanics here.
How so?
Well, if earnings are the ultimate denominator in your valuation equation, and your earnings just went up over 2,000%, how does the overall valuation compress so violently? The sources show the PE ratio collapsed from over 130 times earnings down to just 19 times earnings right now.
Yeah, it's a brutal compression.
It really is. This feels like spending 5 years meticulously renovating a house, right?
Yep.
Fixing the foundation, upgrading the plumbing, making it flawless, only for the appraiser to walk in and tell you right to your face that the property value dropped by 40%.
Why is the market actively punishing a company for becoming incredibly profitable?
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of that multiple compression.
Okay.
Because it isn't a glitch. It is pure behavioral finance. The stock market does not pay a premium for what a business has already achieved. It pays for the velocity of future expansion.
Right, so they're looking forward, not backward. Exactly. When Salesforce commanded a PE ratio of 130, Wall Street was pricing in a hypergrowth narrative. Investors willingly paid an astronomical premium because the expectation was that top-line revenue would continuously double.
So the high multiple was basically a down payment on a future monopoly.
Yes, but then the top-line revenue growth slowed down.
Yeah, today it's hovering in the 8 to 12% range.
And that deceleration is the trigger. The market's algorithmic models no longer categorize Salesforce as a hypergrowth startup. They categorize it as a mature, stable cash cow.
Got it.
So while the absolute dollar amount of profit went up dramatically, the multiple that investors are willing to pay for every dollar of that profit, well, that just came crashing down.
Oh, wow.
To borrow your analogy, the renovation is beautiful, but the market has decided the house is now located in a slow-growing neighborhood.
That makes a lot of sense. But if the market is treating Salesforce like a mature, boring cash cow, we need to stress test that foundation. Because if you live in a slow-growing neighborhood, that foundation better be poured concrete.
Oh, it is. The scale is massive.
Right. The scale detail in the sources is almost hard to wrap your head around. They are the #1 CRM globally, pulling in $41.5 billion in revenue, holding about 23% of the global market share.
Oh, just huge.
Just to put that into perspective for you, that single market share slice is larger than their next 4 competitors combined, and they're operating inside over 150,000 enterprise customers.
Right, and the sheer volume of customers is impressive, but the real structural integrity of that foundation comes from ecosystem lock-in.
Lock-in.
Exactly. A modern enterprise does not simply purchase a standalone Salesforce application anymore.
No, they adopt the whole suite.
Right. They adopt the App Exchange, which has over 7,000 integrated third-party apps. They run internal communications through Slack. They utilize MuleSoft to act as the connective tissue, tying all their disparate legacy corporate databases together.
It functions like digital superglue.
Digital superglue is a great way to put it.
Because once an enterprise adopts a system this deeply, they don't just uninstall it on a Tuesday because they found a cheaper alternative. It takes years of custom configuration, training thousands of global employees, and migrating oceans of proprietary data to get it running.
Yeah, ripping it out would be corporate surgery.
Absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And that brings up a specific metric from the sources. $72 billion in RPO, remaining performance obligations.
Yes, the RPO.
So what does this all mean for the stability of their revenue while they figure out their next growth phase? Explain the mechanism of RPO here.
So RPO is basically the contractual lifeblood of enterprise software. It represents money that customers have legally committed to paying Salesforce in the future.
Even if the work isn't done yet.
Exactly. Even if those specific services have not been fully delivered or billed yet, it is essentially a legally binding revenue backlog.
Oh, wow. So $72 billion in the backlog.
Right. When you combine high switching costs with a $72 billion contractual safety net, the primary benefit is strategic breathing room.
Okay, so they aren't sweating quarter to quarter.
No, management doesn't have to panic about survival. They have a massive runway to re-engineer their product suite to reignite growth.
A $72 billion safety net definitely buys you time, sure. But time to do what? You don't get a 130x multiple back by just playing good defense.
No, you definitely don't.
You have to go back on the offensive. Which explains why they are betting the entire house on AI right now. Specifically, a platform called Agentforce.
And this represents the crucial pivot from stabilizing the margins back to attempting aggressive innovation.
And the numbers on this pivot are moving incredibly fast. Agentforce, running alongside their Data 360 platform, has already reached $2.9 billion in annual recurring revenue.
It's a huge number for a new segment.
Yeah, and it's growing at 200% year over year. And they aren't just selling this to mid-market tech startups. This is massive enterprise deployment. Amazon, Ford, Pfizer.
Right, the big players.
Yeah. And they just landed a staggering $5.6 billion contract with the U.S. Army. Multi-cloud deals over $1 million are up 26%.
Well, deployments of that magnitude, especially a $5.6 billion military contract, those are not beta tests.
Definitely not.
They signal deep institutional trust. But the most disruptive element here isn't the prestige of the clients. It is the fundamental shift in how the software is actually monetized.
Yes, here's where it gets really interesting. Because they are actively changing the underlying SaaS business model.
Right.
Historically, software is monetized by selling seats. If a company employs 100 sales reps, they purchase 100 Salesforce licenses.
Classic SaaS model.
But with Agentforce, they are transitioning to a consumption-based model using what they call AWUs, Agent Work Units. They are moving away from selling software access and moving towards selling units of actual work completed.
Which is a profound shift.
It is. But how does that embedded AI consumption model actually beat out the thousands of standalone AI tools flooding the market right now?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fatal flaw of standalone AI becomes obvious. It lacks institutional context.
Context, right.
An off-the-shelf generative AI model doesn't inherently know your specific customer purchasing histories, or your complex supply chain data, or your internal legal compliance rules.
Because it's just a blank slate.
Exactly. But Agentforce bypasses that limitation entirely because it sits natively right on top of the CRM data Salesforce has been hoarding for over a decade. It is contextually aware AI.
So instead of a generic chatbot, it's an AI that has actively parsed every email, every finalized contract, and every historical customer service ticket your specific company has ever generated.
Precisely. And by shifting the billing mechanism to those agent work units, the financial dynamic changes entirely.
How so?
Under a seat model, a company pays a fixed fee regardless of how much value the software provides that month. But under the AWU model, Salesforce charges a microtransaction, like a fraction of a cent, every time that AI autonomously resolves a customer issue or drafts a customized sales proposal.
So they get paid when the AI actually does the job.
Yes. It creates a usage-driven revenue stream that scales infinitely with the volume of a customer's business. It completely detaches revenue growth from the human headcount of their clients.
I mean, on paper, that sounds like a masterstroke.
It does.
But if Agent Force is growing at 200% and securing billion-dollar military contracts, we really have to address why the stock is still down 45%. Because the sources outline a very distinct bear case here.
The bears definitely have a strong argument.
Yeah, overall revenue growth is still stuck in that 8 to 12% mud. The reality is that a $2.9 billion AI business, even growing at 200%, is still just a drop in the bucket compared to a $41.5 billion total revenue base.
It's the law of large numbers.
Exactly. Furthermore, you've got these legacy products like Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, and Tableau making up about 25% of their total revenue. And those segments are actively dragging down the overall growth average.
Right.
It's like trying to speed up a massive freight train by installing a sports car engine in the caboose. The sheer mass of the legacy business dictates the overall speed.
And that legacy attrition is a very real headwind. Revenue attrition is currently sitting at about 8%. They are defending their territory against incredibly aggressive, well-funded competition.
Like who?
Microsoft Copilot, ServiceNow, HubSpot, they're all coming for that market share.
Okay, I want to push back on the AI narrative entirely here with what I call the cannibalization paradox.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's assume Agent Force works exactly as advertised. It is flawless. It successfully automates the daily workload of 5 human customer service representatives.
Sure.
The logical next step for that enterprise is to fire those 5 people, or at least reassign them, and immediately cancel those 5 human CRM seat subscriptions. So is Agent Force actually expanding the pie for Salesforce, or is it just cannibalizing their foundational subscription business?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it represents the precise existential threat that is compressing their valuation right now. AI is a double-edged sword for any legacy software company built on a per-user licensing model. The automation of enterprise tasks naturally reduces the need for human software licenses.
If the AWU does the work, the human seat just disappears.
That is the inescapable math. To break out of their current valuations, Salesforce must definitively prove to institutional investors that the consumption revenue generated by agent work units is scaling faster than the revenue lost from canceled human seats.
So they can't just tread water.
No, they cannot just break even. Agent Force has to unlock entirely new operational budgets within these enterprises, proving it is a net new revenue driver rather than just, a sophisticated patch for a leaking subscription base. That equation is the battleground for the stock's future.
And the market isn't just guessing about this transition either. Wall Street utilizes a highly rigid algorithmic scorecard for mature SaaS companies, and Salesforce is being held strictly to it.
Very strictly.
The sources detail 4 specific criteria that dictate how institutional capital flows into or out of the stock. First is the rule of 40, or R40. This dictates that a software company's revenue growth percentage plus its operating margin percentage must exceed 40. But according to the data, Salesforce has not hit that 40% mark in 20 consecutive quarters.
And the rule of 40 is the golden benchmark in software valuation.
Is it really that important?
Oh, absolutely. Because it proves a management can sustainably balance aggressive growth with actual profitability. Failing to hit that metric for 5 solid years, that is a massive algorithmic signal to institutional models that the hypergrowth phase is definitively over.
Wow. Okay, so the second metric demands that trailing 12-month operating profit must grow more than 10% quarter over quarter.
Okay.
Third, free cash flow relative to operating profit needs to sit above 60%. And fourth, the debt-to-EBITDA ratio must remain below 3.5x.
Right, and those final 2 metrics are essentially structural quality checks.
Just making sure the company isn't going bankrupt.
Basically, yeah. They confirm the health of the balance sheet and the literal cash-generating efficiency of the operation. And Salesforce easily clears the cash flow and debt hurdles.
Sure, they pass the safety checks. But the market's punishment for missing the growth checks is brutal.
It's unforgiving.
The sources note that in Q1 of fiscal year 2027, Salesforce dropped to securing only 3 passes on this 4-part scorecard. The market response was a 30% drop in the stock price.
A third of the company's value gone.
A negative 30% haircut just for missing a single growth metric. The sensitivity to growth deceleration is extreme.
And that's why management is trying to build a defense mechanism against this volatility.
Right, by executing a massive $50 billion share buyback at what they explicitly call low prices. They have an exceptional cash conversion rate, practically no debt, and a free cash flow yield of about 10%.
Which is incredibly healthy.
It is, but walk me through the actual mechanics here. How much real protection does a $50 billion buyback actually provide when algorithms are willing to slash your market cap by 30% over a minor scorecard miss?
Well, mechanically, a buyback of that magnitude provides a powerful financial floor.
The floor.
Right. When management takes $50 billion of their massive free cash flow and buys their own shares on the open market, they are permanently retiring those shares. They are shrinking the total supply.
Okay, so making the remaining slices of the pie bigger.
Exactly. By reducing the denominator of outstanding shares, their earnings per share mechanically goes up, even if net income stays perfectly flat. Because they boast a 10% free cash flow yield, they generate enough internal cash to act as a guaranteed, relentless buyer in the market. That establishes a firm floor under the start price.
So the foundation is reinforced, the downside risk is capped by their own internal cash generation.
The downside is capped, yes, but a floor is not a ceiling.
Right.
Share buybacks and balance sheet engineering will not force multiple expansion. That ceiling is currently bolted down at a 21x PE ratio. The primary catalyst to break through that ceiling lies in their upcoming Q1 FY 2027 guidance,
Where they're projecting between $11.03 and $11.08 billion in revenue.
Right. To force the market to re-rate the stock back toward a 25 or 30 times earnings multiple, management must prove that Agentforce adoption is accelerating fast enough to push total nominal revenue growth sustainably past the 13% threshold.
They have to prove the sports car engine can actually accelerate the freight train.
Exactly.
Until they cross that 13% growth line, the market will just keep them in the mature cash cow penalty box, regardless of how many billions they pump into stock buybacks.
That's the reality of the market.
So looking at the full picture here, you have a company trading at 19 times earnings, easily passing the balance sheet health checks on the institutional scorecard, and supported by a $50 billion buyback floor. You pair that with a $2.9 billion contextual AI engine growing at 200% year over year.
It's a unique setup.
It really is. Salesforce presents one of the most compelling, complex value opportunities in enterprise tech today.
The profitability is undeniable, and that ecosystem moat is deep. But the existential risk remains. They are racing against the clock to outpace the commoditization of their own human software licenses. They just have to prove that autonomous AI consumption is the definitive future of their top-line revenue.
And this tension leaves you with a final, massive paradigm shift to consider.
Yeah, it's a big one.
If the entire enterprise software industry is fundamentally moving away from charging for access to tools and moving toward charging microtransactions for actual work done by AI agents, well, how long until we stop evaluating tech giants like Salesforce as software providers and start evaluating them as highly scalable digital staffing agencies?
That changes everything.
It really does. And more importantly, what does that fundamental business model shift mean for the valuations of the rest of the SaaS companies sitting in your portfolio right now? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the paradox of profit and price. We'll catch you next time.